My brother accused me of stealing his watch to get me kicked out. He didn't know I was paying his tuition and the mortgage, so I stopped. All of it. What happened next broke the family wide open. When my dad opened my car trunk and found the empty watch box, he didn't look angry. He looked satisfied. That was the part that stayed with me on the drive home. Not the accusation, not the trembling hands as I gripped the wheel, not even the image of my entire extended family standing in the driveway watching like I was a convicted man being walked to a van. It was my father's face in that moment, the way his jaw settled, the way his eyes went from searching to resolved, like a man who had reached the answer he was already hoping for. I had been supporting that man's household for 4 years. His mortgage, his utilities, my brother's tuition at a school that cost more per semester than most people make in 6 months, my mother's medication, the roof repair, the car that my brother drove to the party where he claimed he last saw the watch. They had kicked me out of the family, and my father looked satisfied. I pulled over 2 blocks from the house, put the truck in park, and sat in the dark for a long time. Then I opened my phone and started canceling every automatic payment I had ever set up. All of it. Gone. And that, not the accusation, not the humiliation, not the planted evidence, was the moment everything finally, irreversibly changed. My name is Daniel Reyes. I'm 31 years old, the oldest of 2 boys, and I have spent most of my adult life building something that most people in my position never get to build, a way out. Not out of love for my family, out of everything else. We grew up in a narrow 2-story house in Providence, Rhode Island, where the winters were long and the bills were longer. My dad, Hector, had spent 20 years as a union electrician with enough work to keep us comfortable. Not rich, not struggling, but comfortable in that specific working-class way where you never feel poor until something breaks. My mom, Carmen, worked part-time at a dental office, answering phones and scheduling appointments, and being the warmest person in any room she entered. She was the kind of woman who remembered every patient's name, who baked for every school fundraiser, who made you feel seen when she looked at you. I was 12 when the recession hit. I know that sounds like a detail from a textbook, but I need you to understand it in the particular way it hit our house. Quietly. Not all at once. In the slow way that a tire loses air, you drive on it for weeks before you realize you've been riding on the rim. My dad's overtime disappeared first, then a layoff, then a rehire at reduced rate, then a second layoff. He filled the gaps with side work, small jobs, favors for neighbors, but the gaps kept widening and the favors didn't pay like the union did. My brother, Marco, was 5 years younger than me. That gap meant the world looked different to each of us. I remembered the before, the vacations, the new shoes without argument, the easy way money moved through the house when the union was working. Marco remembered being taken care of, which isn't the same thing. He remembered the outcome, not the machinery behind it. He grew up knowing that if he needed something, it appeared. He didn't develop a theory of where things came from because nobody asked him to. I developed a theory very quickly. Things came from effort, from sacrifice, from showing up and not complaining. So that's what I did. At 16, I had a job at a hardware store on weekends. At 18, I was helping my dad with side electrical work after school. At 20, on a full scholarship I'd spent 2 years fighting for, I left for a computer science program at UMass and worked 20 hours a week at the campus IT help desk to cover living expenses. I graduated in 3 years, not because I was extraordinary, because every extra semester cost money I didn't have and wasted time I couldn't afford. I landed a job at a cybersecurity firm in Boston at 23, 6 figures by 25, my own apartment, my own truck, my own finally. Everything I had was mine. I still drove home every other Sunday for dinner. That routine is important. It's where all the weight got transferred. Slowly, so gradually that by the time I understood what was happening, I was load-bearing. The moment everything shifted came on a Sunday afternoon in November, 3 years before my brother accused me of theft. I had stopped by early to drop off groceries, always on sale, always extra from work, always mine, and found my dad in the backyard, sitting on the steps of the deck he'd been meaning to restain for 2 summers. He was holding his phone face down on his knee and staring at the dead garden beds like they owed him something. My dad was not a man who sat still without purpose. He worked constantly, even when there was nothing to work on, because stillness made him feel like he was losing ground. Seeing him like that, just sitting, phone down, doing nothing, was wrong in a way I felt before I understood it. "Dad," I said. He startled, cleared his throat, made a motion like he was about to stand up. "Stay," I said. "What's going on?" He used the usual words first. "Nothing, just thinking." "Everything's fine." I sat down next to him and waited. I'd learned how to wait. Eventually, in pieces, it came out. The mortgage was 4 months behind. The union work was inconsistent. My mom's rheumatologist had recommended a new medication that their insurance covered at 40%, which left 60% of a number that made my chest tighten when I heard it. There were credit card balances, there were arrangements that had stopped working, and Marco. Marco had been accepted to a private university in Connecticut, full price. My parents had told him yes before consulting the bank account, because that was the word they'd been training themselves to say to Marco since he was 8 years old. I can't disappoint him, my dad said. His voice was flat in the way of a man whose pride has hollowed out. He's been talking about that school for 2 years. Your mother already told everyone. I looked at my father's hands, thick, calloused, the hands of a man who had worked himself into the ground trying to keep a family together. I felt something that I can only describe as the inevitable, like I was already carrying this weight and didn't know it yet. Let me help, I said. He refused. Then he accepted. Then he set one condition. Marco can't know. If he knows what it actually costs, he'll feel guilty. I don't want that for him. I should have questioned that. I should have asked why Marco's guilt was worth protecting when mine was never a consideration. I should have asked when temporary would become permanent and what the exit plan was, and what guarantee existed that this wouldn't expand indefinitely in both directions. I was 27, and I had never learned to say no to my father when he looked like that. Okay, I said. That word cost me more than I will ever fully calculate. For 4 years, I ran 2 budgets, mine and theirs. Theirs was the one I never talked about. The automatic transfers, mortgage, every month directly to the lender, utilities, property taxes, the quarterly premium for my mom's medication, tuition installments, paid directly to the university's financial office in Marco's name. I tracked it in a spreadsheet I never showed anyone, in a tab I labeled with something bland in case anyone ever opened my laptop. I didn't name it what it was, which was the cost of being the oldest son. Over 4 years, $287,000. I know that number precisely. I went back and calculated it the morning after my dad opened my trunk and looked satisfied. $287,000. Enough for a house. Enough for retirement. Enough to change the trajectory of my own life in ways I had been postponing, year by year, because my family's present always felt more urgent than my future. In those 4 years, Marco posted photos from spring break trips to Cancun, from concerts, from what appeared to be an extremely active social life for someone whose education I was financing. My parents liked every post. My mom left proud comments. My dad texted me sometimes on those weekends, funny videos, sports scores, small talk, and never once said, "We see what you're doing. We see you." I told myself I didn't need that. I told myself love wasn't a ledger. I told myself family is forever. I was wrong on all 3 counts, but I was very convincing to myself. The watch entered the story the way expensive things always do, as a symbol that someone wanted to use to measure how much they were loved. Marco had been hinting for months. He'd send me links to watch enthusiast forums. He'd casually mention a boutique near his campus. He had the specific genius of wanting things in a way that made you feel like providing them was your idea. My dad called me in September. "Mijo," he said, voice doing the careful thing it always did when money was coming. "Marco's got a birthday." "I know," I said. "There's a watch he's been talking about." "How much?" My dad said the number, $6,000. I sat very still with the phone against my ear and thought about the retirement contributions I had been underfunding, about the gym membership I had canceled, about the vacation I had rescheduled 3 times because I couldn't justify the expense, about the $287,000 in my spreadsheet. "Okay," I said. I transferred the money that afternoon. At Marco's birthday dinner, my dad presented the watch with the pride of a man giving a gift from his own hands. Marco lifted the box and his eyes went wide, the specific wide of someone who has spent months engineering this exact outcome and still allows themselves to look surprised. He put it on immediately, turned his wrist under the dining room light. "Guys," he said, grinning, "you didn't have to do this." My mom looked watery and proud. My dad looked like a man who had restored something about himself. I watched from across the table and smiled and took photos, because that was my role, to hold the frame while everyone else stood in it. That night, driving home, I asked myself if this would be the last time, if this purchase, this gesture, this proof of love would finally land and stabilize something. 6 weeks later, my brother's watch went missing, and everything I had quietly built turned to ash in one Sunday afternoon. It was a regular Sunday. I arrived early, helped with the kitchen, talked with my mom about her most recent specialist appointment. The house smelled like sofrito and garlic, and the afternoon light came through the kitchen window at an angle that made everything look warmer than the November outside. Dinner was good. Then Marco set his fork down and touched his wrist. "Wait," he said. "Where's my watch?" The question entered the room like a change in pressure. He'd worn it to a friend's party the previous Saturday, he said. He thought he'd taken it off at home. He thought he'd put it on his dresser. But it wasn't there this morning, and he'd been looking. "Did you check your jacket pockets?" I asked. Obviously, he said, with the particular irritation of someone who has already decided they're a victim and doesn't want the crime investigated. We searched. The systematic, futile kind of searching that ends with everyone in the same room, knowing nothing except that the object isn't where it should be. Drawers, laundry, coat pockets, under furniture. Then Marco looked at me, not immediately. There was a pause, a beat too long, where I could see him deciding something. Danny was upstairs earlier, he said conversationally. I looked up. I used the bathroom. Just seems weird, Marco said, tilting his head. I always close my door. There it was. Not an accusation, the architecture of one. Are you saying I took your watch? I asked. I'm saying it's weird, he repeated. It's valuable, and you were upstairs. My dad's face did something I didn't like. Not disbelief, consideration. Dad, I said, and heard the strained calm in my own voice. I went to the bathroom. I didn't touch his room. No one's saying you did, my dad said, which was exactly what people say when everyone in the room is saying it. I tried to re-enter the conversation like a normal person. I tried to help think through where the watch might actually be. My mom kept saying, maybe it's somewhere safe, as if the word safe could redirect traffic. Marco went quiet in the specific way of someone performing victimhood while watching to see if it lands. When I drove home that night, my hands were tight on the wheel, and my stomach felt like gravel. Texts arrived at midnight. You were the only one in that part of the house today. Then, if it was a joke, just give it back. Then, Dad's really upset. I read them 3 times. My thumbs moved over the keyboard for a long moment. I didn't take your watch, Marco. I wouldn't do that. His reply came fast. Whatever. We'll figure it out. Sleep was short and bad. My parents called the next morning before 8. Both of them, one after another. I drove to the house believing that looking them in the eye would settle it. Believing that 31 years of being the steady one would count for something. I was wrong about that too. When I walked in, my mom was at the sink doing nothing. My dad sat at the kitchen table with his hands flat on the surface like he was restraining something. Marco appeared in the doorway holding the empty watch box. Found it, he said, under the mattress in your old room. The room that had been used for storage since I moved out years ago. The room that contained nothing of mine. The room where I had no reason to go. I haven't been in that room, I said. The box was there, Marco said simply. My dad stood up. Danny, if you're having money trouble, I laughed. The sound surprised even me. The bitter, involuntary kind of laugh that escapes when irony becomes physically unbearable. Money trouble, I repeated. People do things they wouldn't normally. I'm not having money trouble, I said. My voice was shaking, but not from guilt. From the surreal quality of this conversation happening in this kitchen, with this man who did not know what was in my bank spreadsheet. I need you to believe me. I didn't take it. They had installed a security camera over the summer. I knew about it because I had suggested it after a neighbor's garage was broken into. My dad pulled up the footage on his laptop. We watched it together. My arrival, my groceries, my kitchen movements, my brief trip upstairs, nothing else. She could have taken just the watch, Marco said. He caught himself. Danny could have had it in his pocket. My aunt and uncle arrived within the hour. I don't know who called them. Then my cousin, Tony, who crossed his arms in the doorway like security. My dad stood in the middle of his kitchen like a judge who has already reached a verdict and is waiting for the formality to conclude. The evidence points to you, he said. What evidence? I said. An empty box that could have been placed anywhere by anyone? Marco made a sound. Wounded. Performative. Unless you're saying I planted it, he said. I looked at him for a long moment. I'm saying I didn't put it there, I said carefully. Then who did? Tony asked, like I was the unreasonable one. I don't know, I said, but I know it wasn't me. My dad's jaw set. Confess, he said, or leave and don't come back until you're ready to tell the truth. I looked at my mom. I had never in my life appealed to my mother over my father, but something was breaking in me and she was my last option. She looked at the floor. Just go, mijo, she whispered. Let things cool down. Then Tony said, check his car. I handed my keys over. We walked outside in a group. My father, my uncle, my cousin, Marco staying back on the porch with his arms crossed. My dad opened my trunk. The blue velvet watch box sat there, half under a work bag I hadn't opened since Thursday. The group exhaled. My dad lifted the box. Empty. He looked at me with that settled expression I will never forget. Still going to say you didn't do this? He said. That was put there, I said. My voice was steady, but my chest was a fist. I haven't opened my trunk since Thursday. I can show you my work badge. I walked to the office this week. Sure, Tony muttered. Leave, my dad said. Now. I walked to the driver's door. As I opened it, I glanced back. Marco was standing on the porch, arms still crossed. His face was arranged into the expression of the wronged party, but his left hand had moved to his collar, touching something beneath his hoodie, something that caught the weak November light for exactly 1 second. The watch face. He had it on, under his sleeve, under his hoodie. He had been wearing it the entire time. The world went very still. I opened my mouth. Then I thought about what I would be walking back into. My father's settled face, my cousin's crossed arms, my uncle's silence, My mother's floor staring, a family that had already rendered a verdict. I got in the truck, I drove, and I pulled over 2 blocks away and sat in the dark and made myself say the thing out loud that I already knew. My brother set me up. My parents let him. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and opened my laptop. I pulled up my financial tracking spreadsheet. I had kept it vague in my head for years because vague was sustainable. Specific is harder to live with. Specific demands decisions. I made it specific, month by month, payment by payment. 4 years of my income redirected into a household that had just decided I was a thief. $287,000. I stared at that number until it stopped feeling like an abstraction and started feeling like 4 years of my life. I called Janet Morales, a financial advisor I'd been referred to once by a colleague and never followed up with because I'd always been too financially stretched to think clearly about my own future. I scheduled an appointment for 10 a.m. Then I called Marcus Webb, an attorney, not family law, contract and property. I needed to know, very precisely, what my obligations were. None. Marcus confirmed it in 11 minutes. Voluntary payments create no legal obligation to continue. The mortgage was my parents' debt. The tuition was Marco's loan responsibility. I had signed nothing. I owed nothing. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I opened my bank's payment portal and began. Mortgage auto transfer, canceled. Utilities, canceled. Mom's medication premium, canceled. Tuition installment scheduled for Marco's spring semester, withdrawn. Each click was quiet, clinical, the sound of a different kind of decision than the one I'd been making for 4 years. Then I wrote a letter. I did not make it angry. Anger can be dismissed, reframed, used against you. I made it factual, the way I make every report at work. Precise language, zero ambiguity, documented evidence attached. I listed every payment I had made over 4 years, with amounts and dates. I included scanned copies of 12 months of bank statements and tuition payment confirmations. I stated clearly that effective immediately, all financial support was ceasing. The last paragraph was one sentence. Because my character has been called into question, and I have been removed from this family without evidence, I am ending the arrangement that has allowed this household to function in my absence. I sealed it, addressed it, set it by my door. Then I went to the gym because my body needed somewhere to put what I was feeling. And I had learned a long time ago that productive anger is better than paralytic grief. 3 nights later, my phone rang at 11:14 p.m. from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Is this Danny? A male voice. Young. Cautious. Who's this? Marcus. Marcus Tran. I was Marco's roommate freshman year. We met at move-in. I remembered a quiet kid with glasses who'd shaken my hand firmly and thanked me for helping carry boxes. What's going on, Marcus? He exhaled. I don't know how to say this without it being weird, but I heard something today and it didn't sit right with me. He told me he'd been at a coffee shop near campus studying. Marco had come in with friends, not noticed him in the corner booth. Marco was loud, the way he got when he was performing for an audience. Marcus had heard fragments at first, then a phrase that made him put down his textbook. He said, I finally got him out of the picture. The sound in my ears changed, like the room had gotten smaller. His friends asked what he meant, Marcus continued. He said you were always being held up like the example, like he could never measure up. He said he needed you gone, so, and this is pretty much exact, so they stopped comparing me to him every 5 seconds. Did he mention the watch? I asked. My voice was very flat. A pause. Yeah, he said he hid it himself, that he set it up to look like you took it. I sat down on my kitchen floor because my legs didn't want to hold me anymore. Thank you, I said. I mean it. Thank you. I'm sorry, man, Marcus said. That's not right. When I hung up, I sat on the kitchen tile for a long time, not crying, just existing inside the confirmation of a thing I'd already known but needed said out loud by someone outside my own head. My brother had framed me. My parents had allowed it. The next morning I called Dr. Raymond Park, a therapist specializing in family dynamics who had been recommended to me years earlier by a colleague who'd gone through his own family rupture. I had never called because I'd always told myself I was handling it. People who handle things don't need help handling things. I made an appointment for the following week. Then I called Janet Morales and went to her office with my spreadsheet printed and labeled. She reviewed it with the expression of a professional absorbing something genuinely troubling. You've been financing an entire household, she said, for 4 years. Yes, at significant cost to your own financial security. Yes, she leaned back in her chair. And none of this was formalized? No agreement, no loan documentation, nothing in writing? My dad's condition for accepting the help was that my brother couldn't know, I said. So nothing was ever written down. Nothing was ever acknowledged. Janet pressed her fingers together. Daniel, what you've been doing is an act of extraordinary generosity, but it was never protected. It was never visible. And now they've decided I'm a thief, I said. and I've decided I'm done. She nodded slowly. Then let's build you a life that doesn't depend on their survival. The first call came 4 days after my letter arrived. My dad, 8:47 a.m. I watched the phone ring 3 times before I answered. What is this? His voice was somewhere between fury and panic, the specific register of a man whose floor has just disappeared. It's exactly what it says, I told him. You can't just cancel the mortgage payment. It was never my mortgage, I said. That was always your mortgage. I was choosing to pay it. I'm choosing to stop. Because of the watch? Because of one? Because you told me to leave, I said. Because you searched my car in front of the family. Because you looked satisfied when you found the box. Because you didn't once in that entire afternoon say, I know my son. He wouldn't do this. I let that sit. So I'm going. He cycled through anger, then justification, then something closer to desperation when he mentioned the mortgage company and what would happen if they fell behind. You'll need to figure that out, I said. I've been figuring things out quietly for 4 years. It's your turn. My mom called that afternoon. She started with tears, which was harder. The medication, she said. Mijo, I need... Mom, I said, as gently as I could manage. You have insurance coverage. Whatever it doesn't cover, there are patient assistance programs. I can send you links. But I can't be the payment anymore. Not after what happened. We were upset, she said. We didn't think... That's the problem, I said. You didn't think about me at all. Marco's texts came from unfamiliar numbers when I blocked his. You're being selfish. Mom is falling apart because of you. You're going to ruin everything. I read them once each and put my phone face down. Then I called Dr. Raymond Park and told him I was looking forward to Thursday. Dr. Park had 19 years in private practice, a specialty in what he called invisible labor and family scapegoating dynamics, and the kind of unhurried manner that made complex things feel examinable rather than overwhelming. In our first session, he said something that rearranged my understanding of the previous 4 years. The invisible provider is one of the most vulnerable positions in a family system, he said. You're essential but unnamed. If the system is stressed, you become available as a target because you can't defend yourself without exposing the secret, which was the condition placed on your help from the beginning. I looked at him. My dad made me promise not to tell Marco. Yes, Dr. Park said, which means the moment Marco accused you, you had no way to defend yourself without breaking the arrangement your father had built. You were structurally unable to protect yourself. I sat with that for a long time. That wasn't accidental, he said carefully. Not necessarily malicious, but it wasn't accidental either. Week by week, I started to see the shape of the thing I'd been living inside. The way being the reliable one had become its own form of disappearing. The way my parents' protection of Marco from the reality of finances had made him into someone who couldn't tolerate the existence of someone better equipped than him. The way my silence had been the condition of their comfort, and the moment I broke it, not even by speaking but by leaving, the whole structure revealed what it had always been. I was infrastructure, and infrastructure doesn't get credit until it fails. The formal acknowledgement came 6 weeks after I sent the letter. My dad showed up at my apartment on a Saturday morning. I saw his truck in the lot from my kitchen window. He sat in it for 12 minutes before getting out, which I know because I watched and counted. When I opened the door, he looked shorter than I remembered. Not physically. Something internal had compressed. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped back. He sat at my kitchen table and I made coffee that neither of us drank, and I waited while he found whatever words he needed. Marcus Tran called me, he said finally. I hadn't known that. I went still. The boy called me and told me what he heard at the coffee shop, my dad said. And I had Marco in front of me and I asked him directly. And at first he lied and then his jaw worked. He told me what he did, how he did it. Silence. Dad, I said carefully. What specifically did he say? He hid the watch in his room and said he'd left it at home. He put the box in your old room. He got a friend to put the other box in your trunk when you were all inside watching the camera footage. I absorbed that. Someone had gone to my truck. During the search, when everyone was crowded around the laptop, someone had slipped outside and put the box in my trunk. A friend, or Marco himself, during the brief window he was unaccounted for. My brother had planned it. Not impulsively, deliberately. Did he say why? I asked. My dad rubbed his face. He said you were always the example, that we were always talking about you like... He stopped. Like you were the standard. He said he needed to feel like he could be enough without being compared. I looked at my father, and you believed him immediately, over me. My dad's throat moved. Yes? Why? A long pause. Because Olivia. Because Marco has always needed more from us, he said. And I think somewhere I started believing he deserved more, because he needed it more. And you, he pressed his hands flat on the table. You never seemed to need anything. You just handled things. And I let that be the story instead of asking what it cost you. It was the most honest sentence my father had ever directed at me in my adult life. It didn't fix anything, but it was real. I was paying your mortgage, I said, for 4 years. I was paying Marco's tuition. I was paying Mom's medication bills. I had $287,000 go into your household over 4 years, and in exchange I stopped. I got my trunk searched in front of my family while you looked satisfied. My dad's eyes were red. He didn't look away. I know, he said. That's not enough, I said. I need you to understand the full thing, not just the accusation, the whole 4 years. I do, he said. We found the payment confirmations. I went through your letter and looked up the records. He swallowed. Danny, I didn't know. I knew you were helping, but I didn't let myself add it up because then you'd have to feel it, I said. He nodded. We sat in silence for a while. Not comfortable silence. The silence of two people who are being honest with each other for the first time in a long time and discovering that honesty has weight. Marco needs to apologize to you in person, my dad said. I told him that. He can take his time, I said. I'm not in a hurry. My dad looked up. What will it take to come back, even partway? I thought about Dr. Park's voice in my head. Boundaries are not punishment. They are accurate description of what you will and won't carry. Transparency, I said. No more secret arrangements. If I help with anything, it's disclosed, it's limited, it has terms, and everyone knows, including Marco. I paused. And I help because I choose to, not because you've structured a situation where I can't say no. My dad nodded slowly. And Marco? He needs to understand what he did, I said. Not just apologize for how it went. Actually understand what he did to me and what I've been doing for your family and what it cost. Okay, my dad said. When he left, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. Not in peace, exactly. In something harder to name. The particular feeling of a person who has finally stopped running a race he didn't choose to enter, and is only now understanding how tired his legs are. Marco's letter arrived 2 weeks later. Actual paper, which told me someone had advised him against a phone call. It was not a perfect apology. There were places where the language curled into explanation, where I was jealous became almost a justification. But there were also places where it was honest in a way I hadn't expected from him. I knew that watch would work because it was from you, he wrote. You were the one who gave the money. I knew how much it cost, and I knew everyone knew how much it cost, and I knew if it was gone, you'd be the one they looked at. I planned it. I'm not going to pretend I didn't. That sentence was worth more to me than any amount of remorse. He admitted the premeditation. He didn't dress it as a moment of weakness. He also wrote, I spent 4 years thinking Dad talked about you because you were the favorite. I didn't understand until Dad showed me your payment records that you were carrying all of us and nobody was saying your name. That's not being a favorite. That was you doing what we should have been doing for ourselves. I made you into a target because it was easier than becoming someone who didn't need one. That sentence I read 4 times. I did not write back immediately. I let 3 weeks pass. Then I wrote a single page. I accept what you've said. I don't accept what you did. Those are different things, and I need you to understand that distinction. What you did nearly destroyed my relationship with our parents and required a professional witness to undo. An apology doesn't undo it. Time and different choices undo it. I'm willing to see what different choices look like, but I'm starting from where we actually are, not where we used to be. I meant every word. Our first family dinner after everything happened in early spring. My mom cooked, but simply. No elaborate spread designed to smooth over the tension with abundance, just rice and beans and chicken, the kind of meal that doesn't perform anything. My dad opened beer. Marco arrived last. He looked different, not broken, but lighter on the performance. The easy confidence he'd always carried was still there, but quieter, less automatic. He was working 2 part-time jobs while attending a state school he'd transferred to after I withdrew the private tuition. He'd stopped posting about his social life online. I didn't know if that was shame or growth, but it looked like something. He looked at me when he came in. Hey, he said. Hey, I said. We ate dinner. There were pauses. There were moments where old patterns tried to reassert themselves. My dad starting to reference something I'd achieved. My mom smoothing over a silence with food. Marco going slightly quiet at a compliment directed at me. But then something different happened. They caught themselves. My dad redirected. My mom let the silence exist. Marco looked up and said something dry about his own work situation that made everyone laugh. Small moments. Imperfect ones, but honest. After dinner, my dad went to his car and came back with a small flat box. I know it's nothing compared to, he started. Don't compare it, I said. Just give it. Inside, a keychain. Simple. Engraved, Daniel Reyes, homeowner. I had bought a condo in March. Small, with good light and a parking spot that was mine. First home. First thing that was permanently and entirely my own. My dad had found out through my mom. We see you, he said. The words came out rough, like something he'd practiced and was still unsure of. We should have said that a long time ago, but we see you. I turned the keychain over in my hand. The engraving was slightly off-center. It didn't matter. Thank you, I said. Later that night, back in my condo, I sat by the window with a beer and watched the city lights. I thought about the version of me that had pulled over 2 blocks from my parents' house in November, sitting in a dark truck saying the truth out loud for the first time. My brother set me up. My parents let him. That sentence had been a revelation, and a destruction, and eventually, a beginning. What I know now that I didn't know then, Carrying people invisibly doesn't make you indispensable. It makes you invisible. The moment you become visible, by stopping, by naming what you've done, by refusing to absorb the consequences of other people's choices, the whole structure has to recalibrate. Mine recalibrated toward me. My family recalibrated toward truth. Not perfectly, not completely. Marco still has flashes of the old resentment. My parents still sometimes slip into the old patterns of treating my reliability like a resource rather than a choice. But now we talk about it. Now I name it when it happens. And now, for the first time, they hear me when I do. The watch, I found out later, had never been pawned. Marco had it. He'd been wearing it under his sleeve the afternoon they threw me out, which I had seen for exactly 1 second in the November light. It's still on his wrist. I think he keeps it there now, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what a $6,000 mistake actually costs. I don't need the watch. I don't need the $287,000 back either, though I think about it sometimes. What I needed was simpler and harder to get than any of that. I needed my family to see me as a person, not a function. I needed to stop being the invisible thing holding everything up. I needed to say, here is what I have been doing, and here is what it has cost me, and here is where I am stopping. And I needed to do it without apology. I did all three. That's not a story about revenge. It's a story about what happens when the most reliable person in a room finally decides that reliability doesn't require invisibility, and when the people who needed him the most finally learn the difference.